With a 50% obesity rate in the U.S. and more unhealthy people than ever before, it is time to make America healthy. Welcome to Make America Healthy with Beth Shaw. If you're feeling tired, toxic, heavy, slow, or stressed, then keep listening. Beth and her expert guests are here to offer practical advice and share the tools you need to reclaim your physical, mental, and emotional health. Now, here is your host, Beth.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Make America Healthy, where our goal is to give you tools, tricks, and tips so that you can improve your health on every level, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. And today's topic is transformation. What does it mean? How do we get there? How long will it take? And we're going to have two guests on that both have amazing stories of transformation. And they're going to be able to guide you in perhaps your own journey of transformation. So we have Dr. Jane Tornatore, who is a brain geek and self-compassion expert based in Seattle, Washington. She's a coach, a therapist, a speaker, and author. She works with intelligent, motivated, highly achieving people who are committed to being better, and yet sometimes they never feel better. So women and men who want to finally like themselves and stop second guessing their decisions. And she's got a PhD and a master's degree. She has published a book called Everything is Perfect, Just Not Me, a roadmap for self-awareness. And we also have with us Derek, who is Derek McNulty, who has a very interesting bio. He comes from Dublin, Ireland, and he came to the US with only $200, had to work at McDonald's. Poor you, Derek. He had a very large business in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, with a business partner. And well, you'll hear the story, but basically that didn't go very well. And so he's got an amazing story of transformation. He broke the world's record last year for the largest beach cleanup, clearing 11 miles of beach. And he is working on patented technology that prevents mosquitoes from biting us. So we welcome both of our guests today to the show. And Derek, I'm going to open it up with you. We have an interesting, most recent history. I was on my way to Miami for a party, and Derek was my Lyft driver. And my companion on the way to the party, we were talking about plant medicine. And we got into a great conversation with Derek and learned his story and talked a lot about so many of the different ways that we as humans can transform. So, Derek, I'm going to let you tell your story because it's a good one.
So I'll jump right in where things really took a fork in the road. Having accumulated a pretty decent amount of money and a quite strong business, I then came to the point where it all went away overnight, where my partner embezzled every penny of it. And all in all, probably went from a value of about 2 million to zero in the space of 2 days. It was a tough thing to deal with. And at the time I started wondering, am I making good decisions? Why is it that life reflects back to me in this way? It must be something I'm doing. And maybe I'm the one who deliberately sabotaged it because I need something coming. I needed a lot of answers, and I needed them fast because I was starting to implode, as anyone might do in that case. But what I found was, I found various people in my path. I made a very deliberate decision to separate from who I was by getting rid of every connection to my past. And I got the car and I got the laptop and decided I was going to basically drive 12 hours a day, 8 hours of sleep, 12 hours a day, 8 hours of sleep. And during that time, interview every single person I met in the car. All in all, 22,000 people over a 3-year period. And it really has given me an incredible insight to the human condition and people in general. And during that experience, I also ran into a lot of shamans who had done a lot of work with plant medicines and heard their philosophies and where they had been transformed, used using some of the therapies, if you will, that come from plant medicines. So it's been an astonishing journey. One of the things we talk about transformation that I think is worth considering is, if you go down any road of transformation, trying isn't going to make it happen, but observing your response from the world, your response from what's happening. If you're aligned, things goes well. If things are challenging, they don't go well. If they're challenging, it's probably, from my experience, because you're trying too hard. We're meant to be just an observers in this journey. And so what I found is that every time I needed to speak to somebody, they happened to get in my car next. And speaking to you was just such a situation where you guys were talking in the back, and you were kind of dropping this information towards your friend about some of your interest in plant medicines. And I've had a very large exposure to it, because I did spend about a year during that time spent at a house that were filled with shamans, and they would do all these plant medicines on a couple of weeks, every couple of weeks or so they'd do another ceremony. And I learned a great deal from those guys about how to just observe life and to be grateful for everything that you have in front of you, to imagine great ways that life could possibly be. So this is like imagining a future, imagining something you want to become. And instead of striving towards it, just allow it to be there as an idea. When you do that, you're actually showing gratitude for life in the ways that it can be, and then allow those things to come to you when the timing is right, when the universe, God, whichever, what have you, decides this is the gift you should get next. You are ready for it now. It will start to come to you because you've already imagined it very clearly. You'll recognize it as coming towards you, and you'll fall into your own future. Again, you don't want to be trying to do these things. You just want to imagine the greatness that they are. And by doing that, you're showing great gratitude. And so there was a few little things I learned along the way, but that was some of the nuggets in there that we had spoken about in the car that evening.
Wonderful. So Dr. Jane, you have probably a very different approach because you were dealing with a lot of perfectionists, something I know a lot about. And, those of us who struggle with this try and make things happen constantly. And so I'm curious as to your background, where you got your start, and, a little bit of your thoughts on transformation. And I also struggle with, like, how much do I push and force and try to make things happen versus surrendering, and then the fear around surrendering that nothing's going to happen, and things will easily slip through my grasp. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you, and you'll tell us from your, doctor perspective, different routes we can take.
Well, Derek, your story is like, holy cow. I mean, to be able to handle that level of change and not have your ego go, I'm out of here. Like, kudos to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I started my self-love journey while I was in grad school, and I was dating someone that I thought we were going to get married. And then he left me for somebody else. And I just did not handle it very well. I was drinking. I would just basically work, come home, exercise, drink, and watch TV. And that was like, because I just wanted to numb. I didn't want to feel. And this went on for a couple months. And then I was reading some book like Harville Hendrix or something. And it said, the other person hurt you once. You hurt yourself thousands of times with every thought about them. And I went, oh my goodness, that is completely what I hadn't talked to him in a couple months. And every day I was still like, how dare he? How dare they be happy? How dare he? Like, all this, all focused on him and not on me. And so I read that and I went, oh, okay. So I guess it's up to me. And I was suicidal at that time. I just didn't want to be here. But I read that and went, okay, so this story that I've created is not working. The story was, I needed a man to love me to be lovable. And I'm in the PhD program for marriage and family therapy. But we all have these beliefs, right? That we learned as little people. And I think our transformation really comes when we have these beliefs and we finally see they're getting in my way. I mean, Derek, you talked like, I think I'm the one who might be getting in my way here. I might be helping to create. We all do this, and transformation happens when we go, okay, I guess I will do something different, be different, think different, whatever it is, be different than previously. It's like do something new, which brings up absolute fear, right? Anything new, our ego is like, oh, no. If I don't know it, I can't survive. I'm going to die. Just do the same thing, even if it's awful. Like I was just repetitively thinking about my boyfriend, my ex, because that was what was familiar. It was making me miserable.
So, and we're talking about neural pathways, Dr. Jane, which is, they're not so, and that's actually one of the reasons why I went on a plant medicine journey a few weeks ago. I thought, let me create some new neural pathways for myself. It also requires a certain level of awareness so that we can catch the thought or notice we're having the same thought repetitively, and then shift our thoughts, which, for a lot of us that's not that easy.
It's not. Here's the really cool thing about awareness is when when you're talking to somebody and they're doing something wrong, or they have this thought pattern that is not helping them, and you're saying, hey, this isn't helping. They're like, I know. Well, that knowing is like the left prefrontal cortex area. And I was stunned to learn this. There are no connections between the left frontal cortex and our amygdala, our fight or flight part of our brain, right? No connections. So when you say, you should do this, it does nothing to calm us down if we're really worried, anxious, afraid. However, the awareness, the medial frontal cortex, that does have direct connections to our amygdala. So if we can just be aware and go, wait a minute, what's happening? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What's going on? When we come into present moment awareness, we can actually calm ourselves down. And in that moment is when we can create the new neural pathways. When we're worried, when we're saying the same old thoughts, we are simply running old neural pathways. It's like being on a super highway and saying, oh, I'm going to get off. But there are very few exits on a super highway. That present moment, you're on kind of a cow path. And you're like, I want to get off this. So I'm just going to step right here with this new thought, with this new feeling, with this new focus of my attention. So awareness is absolutely key to creating that change. And it can be as simple as, oh, I'm thinking this, I'm not good enough. Well, how about if I want to feel like I'm good enough?
Could I jump in here for a second? Do you
Sure.
mind? One of the things that came up a lot with a lot of the shamans in these kind of scenarios was this idea that we're always looking at any vignette, any story, any version of things that have happened to ourselves from our perspective, which sounds, of course, that's the way it is. But that's the very wrong thing to do, because you're going to keep beating yourself up, because there's only so many ways you can tell that story if you look at it from your perspective. And so the way to get out from underneath that is to find the right way to forgive. And the right way to forgive, because you have to forgive yourself, you have to forgive everyone else in the scenario, is to separate yourself and not have the emotional attachment that you seem to be impossible to get away from. And the only way to really do that, I have found, and talking with these other folks, is to be able to look at the scenario and see who won, who did well. If this little vignette, this little story, this idea, this scenario that has happened, and maybe there's a bundle of them in your life, you look at it and say, okay, who won? Because if all of those stories, and they are stories if they're told well by a good storyteller, became a movie, we'd all be rooting for the guy who won, the guy who was the triumph over adversity, the guy who did find his way through. That's the guy we'd all root for. So why not do it in this scenario? Because we're getting personally attached to it and we're drawn in, and our ego won't let go, because we always have to be right, because we're trying to protect ourselves at all times. So we're always trying to find righteousness in there, and there isn't any, because we're looking at ourselves. So if you start looking at all of these stories in there and you start seeing who won and can truly separate yourself from the idea that you don't like that they won, get over yourself. Look at that story and go, that man did well, that woman did well, and kudos, good for them, and be truly proud of that person. And what you'll start to realize is you're the person who supported that. And all of a sudden, you're the one that makes the world beautiful for everybody else. And that is the role of life. That is what we should do. We shouldn't be looking for the miracle all the time for ourselves. We should be presenting the mirror for other people so that you get to be in the presence of miracles. And that is wonderful to feel. because you've helped other people. You feel good about yourself. And now you become a passive observer in your own little vignette collection that you didn't like before. Only now you're the supporting cast that made it all happen. And aren't you fantastic? And aren't you strong, powerful, and great? And when it comes time for you to be bestowed with all the gifts that God and the universe can give you, you'll be okay with it because you've been playing a supporting role for long enough. And finally allow the space for yourself to be happy. And other people will recognize that things just seem to bounce off of you, and somehow you're happy for everybody else. And that will become the reflection you get from life. I think it's much more.
So this sounds like a story of triumph over adversity, which some people are able to do, and then other people not. So on that note, Dr. Jane, I have a question for you. I have several people in my life who have had health crises. I have a personal trainer who's got leukemia now in his 40s, and another friend of mine who developed mold toxicity in her body because that's what she does for work, is mold remediation. You know, both of these individuals are starting training programs to help others overcome similar conditions. So what differentiates the one who triumphs in situations like this, like Derek, versus the person who just, you know, kind of sinks into a hole in the ground and doesn't make something meaningful out of their crisis?
It's a great question. And there are 6 gazillion possible answers for it. One thing I will say is, I remember I read this book, Hidden Blessings by Jet Saris, and there was a quote in there that just boggled my mind. She said, many people die at 50 and are buried in their 80s. And it's the people, as you said, pre-show, there are many people who do not feel the need to change their life. Like, it's what it is, and that's all that's available, and that's what they're going to do. And that, I would say, is partly personality that we're born, or if you believe in, you know, multiple lives that we're coming in with, or it could be training, like our beliefs about who we are in the world and how safe the world are pretty much formed by the time we're 7 because of our brain states and the different waves and the way we take in information. So most of us have our core personality and the belief of who we are and what the world is by the time we hit grade school, right?
That's a very scary thought, especially for those of us who had rather adverse childhood experiences.
And here's the cool thing. These beliefs were learned. We did not come out of the womb going, I think I'm going to suck in this life, or I'm going to have a whole lot of problems, or I'm a winner. Like, we come out as just little balls of nervous system and experience. So the beautiful thing that we really started learning, I don't know, around 25 years ago, because we finally had the science to do it, is the brain can rewire itself. And now everybody talks about rewiring, and it is brilliant. It does take present moment awareness. Like, one of the things this is my own personal opinion, but I believe that plant medicines work, or any kind of psychedelics work, is because they shut down the part of our brain that is wedded to our history, right? I think I've taken ayahuasca also, and it showed me a lot of my old beliefs. So I think ayahuasca is a whole different animal as far as the psychedelics. I think it's super powerful. But like something like ecstasy, it's like you are before you were ever hurt.
And that's why MDMA or ecstasy was originally developed as a tool for psychiatrists, psychologists to use to do therapy on their clients, right? Without them having the emotional attachment to reliving certain life experiences that they deemed traumatic.
Yeah. And it's like that. It's like Derek was saying, you know, you see the world as beautiful as possible. It's all love. So let's just hang out in that space and have these new thoughts and feelings from that space. So you're running a whole different set of neural pathways, with the really old scary ones just kind of like to the side for a few hours. so we can
And
really.
again, this would be something guided via therapy. I'm assuming. I always caution our listeners, like, just don't go out and
Right.
pop a pill at a nightclub and expect transformation. It really needs to be very intentional.
Yeah.
And I actually understand, because I saw Rick Doblin from MAP speak at a conference a couple of months ago, that MDMA is probably the next substance to be declassified as a Schedule I drug, so that more people can use it for the matter in which it was originally intended, therapeutic purposes.
Right, right. And all that is wonderful. And the world seems to really be opening up to that. And that is becoming more available, which is awesome. But there are also things we can do, like day in and day out, to slowly shift those neural pathways, those old beliefs that we learned. And Derek, you were talking about just focus on one, what you want, focus on what is good, forgiveness is always awesome. I see it more of a, it happens by intention and by grace. I can't make myself forgive, nobody can, but if we keep intending and offering it, I think we come to forgiveness. But we can do stuff like, oh, I'm such a loser. It's hard if we are in that state to go, no, I'm a winner. But we can go, and it's like voting for other people's success, right? We can go, I'd like to be happier with myself. I want to, or if we really can't get there, I want to feel good about myself. And almost everybody can get there. So just repetitive thoughts, this present moment, here's how I want to think, here's how I want to feel, here's what I want to believe about myself. We do that enough, we will create going from the cow path to a road, and we do it enough, we've got our own new super highway. And I think that medicines really help speed that up, but we can do it all by ourselves every day.
So I have a question for you, Dr. Jane. Let's say someone wants to lose 50 pounds. And yet they keep engaging in behaviors that is not going to help that weight loss, whether it's not going to the gym, whether it's eating the wrong foods, drinking too much alcohol, whatever. Do you find that there's a certain subset of the population, I'm not sure how large it is, that actually finds reward in beating themselves up for not knowing what they want? Well, maybe they know what they want, but not engaging in practices that you would qualify as what is good. And how do you you probably don't get a lot of those clients because your clients are perfectionists. What do you do with those people?
When we want a healthy behavior and we continually don't do it, that tells me there's always an unconscious belief, pre-7, that is driving the show. So when we go, oh, I want to eat that healthy thing, this, what I call inhibitor, comes in, this old belief, you don't deserve it. Who do you think you are? It's too hard. You're always going to be making bad choices. You don't deserve, like, if you think you can lose weight, you would have done it already. It's too late. Everything to stop us from making that new behavior, because it's not so much a reward as, I know this. I am this weight. I know what I am this weight. I know how people respond to me. I know how I feel. The ego's like, yay, you know this. This new person who is healthier, who has less weight, has more, whatever they're looking for. The ego sees that as scary. Like somebody once said to me, or actually it was a spiritual comedian, I'm blanking on his name, but he said, the ego will choose known misery over unknown happiness every single time. Change is scary. So we find that part that is scared with change and then work with that. And it's often unconscious.
And so in dealing with unconscious, and again, there are certain things like plant medicine that help us get in there. What are some techniques? And I've asked this question to many of our guests, but, if you don't like who's driving the bus and the way your life is going on that ride, and the subconscious is really doing the driving, like, how do you get in there and dig it out and make those changes?
That's a great question. That's where some of the new therapy models can be super helpful, like internal family systems. I do something called SIMS, complex integration from multiple systems. They're all sorts of memory integration, lots of different things. But basically, it's hard to access our unconscious. The easiest way, I think, is to feel in our body. Like when we're having a situation like, oh my God, overnight, I just lost $2 million, right? And we be present with that. And however that shows up in our body, we put our attention there. We be super curious, which is really hard when we feel miserable, but we're curious about what does this dread, what does this misery, what does this, whatever the feeling is, what does it feel like? What is it? What color is it? Is it a shape? Is it moving or still? What temperature is it? And really bring our right brain curiosity to start to know it. And then we will get information that we can't just get from our left brain trying to figure it out. Because we only will get the same message.
Could I jump in here for a second again? Sorry. One of the things I had someone ask me a few years ago, they wanted to lose a lot of weight for a wedding. And this scenario seems to present itself a lot. Mm-hmm. And so really getting to the question was not how do you lose weight? Look, there's a million books out there on how to lose weight, right? So you can find out how to run, walk, eat better. There's thousands of books. So it's not a secret as to how our body can lose weight. And so it wasn't about that. It was about, well, what do you think is going to happen when you have lost this weight? How are things going to be different? They go, well, people will see me differently. I said, so really you want people to see you differently? Or you want to show that you look good in a dress. Why? Because they look good in a dress. So you want to be able to associate with people who look that certain way. And so really it was about coming at it from a different angle completely, because the one that they've been trying clearly isn't working. And they have all the reasons why not to achieve something. And it's very hard to make such a big difference. If you're not a sporting person, how the hell are you going to suddenly become a sporting person? And maybe then you start eating wrong because you feel bad about where you are in life. Where instead, all you got to do is pick up the phone or go visit that person, have a conversation with them leading up to the wedding. And by the time the wedding comes, you're going to feel great about your relationship with that person. And it won't matter at all about your weight. But coincidentally, of course, through the joy of life that you've now received, you've been living a better way and actually eating better foods. So I think very often, if we try to attack a problem head on, our natural instinct is going to be to shut that down, because we've been doing that very, very well. And we've gotten very, very good at doing those things, of shutting down our own progress. And so to instead ask why. It's like these people who want to get a new car and they'll put up a vision board with a picture of a car and say, I want this car. And all they do then every day, look at the car and go, oh, I can't wait to have that car. Instead of asking themselves, how would you feel if you got the car? Oh, well, I'd feel free and accomplished and so on. They throw in 3 or 4 little adjectives here. Well, then sit there and think about those adjectives and be that way right now. And then you'll find yourself having the joy you would have when you achieve this goal that has nothing to do with how you want to feel. I think it works out much better.
Great. Thank you for that, Derek. Dr. Jane, so you're working with a lot of perfectionists who probably have the opposite of poor problem solving skills. They're masters at problem solving and overachieving and, the endless quest for more on some level. Where do we find the balance between perfectionism and just kind of, throwing our arms in the air and just not really wanting to do much of anything or make positive change? There's got to be some balance. And I'm imagining you're pulling some people over the fence in the opposite direction than you are pushing them over the fence to motivation and self-growth and transformation.
Right. Oh, goodness. My mind just went completely blank. I'm like, how do you change from being a perfectionist? So one of the things I really work with, because perfectionists often have a lot of anxiety. They're always focused on what they're worried about versus what could go right? So there's this model I learned from Stephen Covey, and it's, I renamed it because it makes more sense to my clients. The circle of power, which is our thoughts and behaviors, and the circle of control or victim, which is everything other than our thoughts and behaviors. And perfectionists tend to want to manage everything, not only our thoughts and behaviors, but, well, if you just did this way, it'd be better. And if this just happened, things would be so much easier for it. So we're focused on trying to fix everything because we're perfectionists. We want everything to be better. So it can reduce our stress just a little bit if we're worried about something, if we're hopeless, helpless, stuck, anxious. We are out in this circle of control and victim. It's a much bigger circle than our little circle of power and agency. So if we can say, okay, so I'm really worried about this, or this is really bothering me, I can't stop thinking about it. If we can come here and go, okay, is there anything I can do about it? Then do it then, or make a plan to do it. And if we've tried and the person, the situation, the whatever isn't changing, then we come back to the circle of power and agency and say, well, how do I want to be with it? Here's what is. How do I want to live with that? And that just takes a whole lot of stuff off our plate right away as perfectionists. But there's one tool that I will give that if I ever had a gravestone, it would be on my gravestone. And it is, if I were queen of the world, I would ban the word should, must, have to, and need. And for Midwesterners, gotta. Because these words create stress. And perfectionists, most people, but especially perfectionists, are trying to make themselves better by beating themselves up. I should do that. What's wrong with me? Why haven't I done it yet? So literally, we're motivating ourselves and demotivating ourselves with our tool. Now, if we say something like, it'd be a good idea, it'd be helpful, it's a completely different story in our psyche and in our body. So are you willing to try and experiment?
Sure.
Great. Okay. So can you both think of something that you should do, you have to do, it's on your list, and it's kind of giving you a little stress?
Okay.
You got something?
Yeah.
Okay. So say to yourselves, or out loud if you want, I should, and whatever it is. And then notice how your body feels.
I mean, I'll do it. I recently moved, and there's a great pool where I moved, and I'm like, I should be swimming every day, but like every day goes by and I'm not swimming.
Yeah.
So yeah, it makes me feel a little like heavy, dense to say that to myself.
Your whole body, or just part of your body?
It feels like I drank some clay liquid or something.
Awesome. Beautiful. Now say it would be a good idea to get in the pool, or it'd be helpful, whatever feels better to you.
Okay. That definitely feels a little lighter.
Yeah. So does your whole body feel a little lighter, or just the parts? Yeah. So it's a simple thing, and we're saying the same thing. We're just doing it in a kinder, more compassionate way. And the really cool thing is, when we say it would be helpful or it'd be a good idea, we also set our subconscious with the task of, well, if it's helpful or it's a good idea, when would it be best to do it? And so we start our unconscious searching, doing a search pattern for how to get it done then. So that is the simplest tool I know, and one I will tell everybody I talk more than 5 minutes with. It is so powerful in reducing our stress right away.
So again, we are removing the words should, must, have to, and need from our vocabulary. And if we can, and just putting in, it would be a good idea too.
Yeah, or it would be helpful.
Okay, great. I'm writing this down.
Awesome. Now, if you have perfectionists listening to your show, they're going to say, oh, I have to say that all the time now, or I have to want to do something. And the really important part is listening to our body. Like if I say, I want to do my taxes. Well, I don't. My body's going to say, no, you're lying, and I'll feel awful. So it isn't about saying the right words because they're right, but the words that make you feel lighter, a little more hopeful, a little more forward, feeling a little more possibility. So if it's a good idea to do taxes, yeah, I can get behind that. I want to do taxes? No. I want to have a healthier body. If that makes me feel good, awesome. Then use want then. But perfectionists tend to go, yeah, I want all this stuff. And then they just feel bad.
So I have another question for you about perfectionism, and it's perhaps barrier to transformation. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of perfectionists, myself included, who have a bit of OCD. Mm-hmm. Where do you coach clients with things like that?
OCD?
Yeah.
I really, just in my work in general, I help people move to their body and feel the effects of their thoughts, of their habits, of their behaviors, and how it feels in their body. And that's always a warning. It's our bodies are like, hey, you're doing something that's not helping. And OCD behaviors are their reduction of anxiety.
Yes.
Behavior makes us feel calmer, right? So if we can find other ways, and that's a habit, and then it's a neural pathway, and like, great, when I do that, I can relax. So it's just built up neural pathways, right? So, I mean, it's more than that, but that's a key component of it. So if we create other ways to reduce our anxiety, if we just start to do that deep breathing, if we do like a relaxation exercise, if we do something to physically calm our body, to activate the parasympathetic and have that cued and connected and related to the reduction of anxiety, then it just gives us more choice. Then we can do the OCD behavior, but the more we practice the other, the more that comes online. I was like, do I want to do that habit, or do I want to do this other habit that actually feels better in the long run? So we give ourselves more choice by that practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I love how you're pushing people towards more mind-body activities like deep breathing, meditation, as opposed to pushing people towards medication.
Yeah, medications just kind of cover it. They don't really deal with the underlying, if it's stress, if it's beliefs, if it's trauma, they kind of cover. And sometimes they help us create more coping mechanisms, but they in themselves don't create new coping mechanisms. That's in our power. And we can do that, with or without medications.
Right. Thank you for that. In preparation for this ayahuasca journey that I went on, I gave up my antidepressant again. So I always find it interesting to engage with myself as my baseline, as opposed to the more medicated, uplifted version. And for myself personally, it's been a very powerful exercise which I've done numerous times during the pandemic, just to kind of, see.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a lot of people are actually afraid to stop taking their pills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was on ADHD and antidepressants actually before I did my own ayahuasca journey, right? And it was super helpful for me when I was in grad school, and it got me above water, but I also didn't like the side effects.
Yeah.
So I was able to get off of it. And
so you got off of it. You got off of it for an ayahuasca journey and then never returned to it again.
I actually got off of it before because I started having side effects.
Okay.
I looked for other natural things that would help support my body. And then the ayahuasca journey just kind of really helped put me over the hump into the new way of thinking and being.
And was it a one-time journey, or did you do multiple sessions?
Multiple sessions.
Awesome.
Yeah. It was honestly, and it was one of the bravest things I've ever done, right? It was once after the first night, I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. Cause I was, I was fighting the process because I didn't want to see life as it really was. And then after that, I'm like, oh no, I really want to. So it was me seeing how I was getting in the way for really fully living.
That's wonderful. I love it when we have, I'll call you a Western medicine doctor because, you have a doctorate in psychology, I'm assuming. I love it when there is an embracement of other modalities because I think everything works very well together.
Yeah, we all, like Derek and I, we have different ways of approaching the world. And what I've really found is there's no one way. We find the way that works for us, right? And, you use yoga and the ayahuasca and the Western medicine of the antidepressants. And so what I think we're all most powerful is when we find the way that fits for us. Because my way works for some people, your way works for some people, Derek's way works for some people. But if we think that we have to work in the way that whatever expert is presenting us, and especially as a perfectionist, I'm like, why can't I do it that way? It's important for me to find what works for me, what fits with my belief system and my soul and my capability, frankly. And that's when we're best, is when we go, oh, yay, this works for me. Yay.
And we're living in a society. Yeah, we're living in a society now that I don't think encourages discovery or to be very creative in our healing approach, or for that matter, to be curious as to how many different ways. I wrote a book called Yogaline that came out a few years ago. And in that, we talk about the wheel of health and how there's so many different spokes to it, but to be willing to do whatever it takes to make a change. Again, I have some friends that have health crisis, and I see some are very willing to do whatever it takes, and other people just keep many doors closed that perhaps when opened could be so beneficial to them.
Yeah. And I think it all comes down to how safe we feel. I was just doing an online training, and the instructor said that she really trusts her clients' systems. Some of us are safe enough to go, what about this? And what about this adventure? And let me try this. I'm not sure how it'll work, but it sounds fun. It sounds like it could help. And other people are like, no, I'm scared to try something new, because they aren't safe enough to expand beyond their known reality.
And is that, again, something that is developed in childhood that we're kind of stuck with? Or do you believe we can kind of keep pushing? I was thinking back this morning. I had first heard about ayahuasca maybe around 2011 or 12 when I was living in Los Angeles. And, some people in the conversation were like, yeah, I don't know, that's really powerful. I don't know that I'm ready for it. And I did feel that way for a few years until I made the leap. And to me, one of the most exciting things about doing it, and now it's been about a dozen times that I've done it, is that you are really trusting yourself to bring yourself back to a more whole place. And we have a training at Yoga Fit. It's our level 5 training, unification. And in that, we talk about that muscle that is stronger than the body or the mind. I like to call it the unification muscle. And you're kind of trusting your unification muscle to be able to bring you back in a more cohesive way than perhaps you were 24 hours ago.
Yeah, it's that self-trust. And, when we have experiences like losing all our money at once or losing our health or whatever it is, it's that self of like, I am resilient. I will get through this. And that's what makes us stronger. Every time we face some difficulty, when we have that unification, what did you call it? Unification.
I called it the unification muscle.
I love that unification muscle to go, I survived this. And every time we do, we get a little more of ourselves. We get a little bigger. We get a little stronger. We get a little more confident. We become more into ourselves, I think.
So a lot of the baseline of what we've discussed is fear of making a change, whether it's positive or not so positive. Do you have either one of you have any strategies for people who are dealing with fear and that fear is stopping them from being their best selves?
You want me to address this one?
Sure.
Sure. Well, fear is basically an irrational thought because it's based on something you don't even know. And how far it's going to go, you don't know because you never allowed yourself to go there. And I think most of the time, people who have an obsessive notion that they have to work the hardest they can to get where they want to go are forgetting the fact that they're really good at covering all the different things they need to have covered. And as a result, if they just sit still and allow things to happen, they won't be putting in so much effort to making sure things go well. They'll actually go quite well all by themselves. And by watching the back door and things that might go wrong, they're going to actually possibly manifest those things because they're thinking about them so clearly. They have to present themselves in order to validate their own thought process.
Right.
So it's really, it is a bad way of moving forward. Instead, to look at other people and see how they do things differently to achieve the same goal, you'll realize they don't do it as well as you. And very often, I think people get lost in that idea that I can do it so much better, get out of my way, let go, I blah, 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 blah. When in fact, they're better off observing how someone else does less and still somehow seems to get more out of the outcome. And so letting go and trusting and allowing things to happen and let the failures fall where they are. Because the failure is only your interpretation of what you're seeing. And everything you try is going to end up with a result. It's not a failure. It's not a success either. It's just a result. And so no matter what happens around you, just realize that you're just observing. You really don't have much say in the matter anyway, because things haven't always gone well, and sometimes they've gone very well. And so I think we're always better off just being the observer, allowing the world to happen to us, stop trying to control everything, and instead allow others to take the wheel a little bit. And you'll find that you're giving to others the power that you were holding on to. And they're doing better with what you allowed them to have happen in front of you when you got to be a part of it.
Wonderful. So as we move towards the last 10 minutes of the show, useful tips for our listeners to take charge of their own transformation, perhaps transform in ways that they didn't even think were possible, and just to, lead their best, boldest life every day.
Yeah, I've got one that directly relates to fear, because if we are transforming, we will face fear because we're changing. And one of the things I've found, and I say ad nauseum to my clients, is no feeling, including fear, has ever lasted forever. Like every feeling in the history of the world has eventually changed. So when we're feeling afraid, as we're, about to step into something new, into our transformation, or just small, like I'm afraid to make this phone call. If we pay attention to our body and feel the physical sensations of the emotion, whatever it is, just paying attention, if we do not repress it or feed it like, oh my God, and then what's going to happen? And then this terrible, if we don't do either of those, our body's neurochemical process is done within 2 minutes.
Wow.
So if we're afraid, if we just let the feeling do its thing, it is literally done in 2 minutes. I've never gotten that fast because I can't, I'm like, okay, don't repress, but I'm repressing. I do both, but I've gotten as fast as 5 minutes. But if we just feel it, it's just a feeling and it will pass. And then we can go, and now I want to take this step. Now I want to take this action. Now I want to think this thought. It'll pass.
Yeah, I used to acknowledge my fear. In fact, I still do it when a fear comes up, and I would just be like, hey, this is fear. Hello, fear. And kind of have a little conversation with it.
Exactly. And that brings on your medial frontal cortex, which connects to your amygdala, which calms you. So it's brilliant.
We have to allow ourselves the ability to be sad. We have to allow ourselves to allow pain to wash over us, to accept defeat and to feel those feelings. Because if we don't do that, we're never going to give ourselves permission to be happy when it's time to be happy. We will hold ourselves back. The more we allow ourselves to be sad, the more we allow ourselves to feel, the more we allow ourselves to feel joy too. It is an opposite. And so in order to get past all of those feelings of sadness, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be miserable. It's okay to fail. It's okay to cry your eyes out at a silly commercial on TV. It's all good. You have to allow. And only then can you really enjoy life, because then it can allow itself to be happening to you. And you give yourself permission to do these things because you feel it's all appropriate. I've been sad today. I'm going to be happy too. Otherwise, there'll be guilt and you can't do it. And a lot of those things come from fear. There's nothing to be afraid of. Look, if a picture paints 1,000 words, an emotion paints thousands of pictures. Live in the world of emotion and you'll get past all of the complication your mind can put in the way of anything by analyzing it. And so instead, you're much better off just enjoying what's happening all the time, regardless of how you feel about it. It's just a feeling. It'll come and go. Afterwards, when it's out of the way, if you want, you can analyze it as a passive observer. But to fight your way through that emotion is futile.
Wonderful. That's very, very sage advice, Jarek. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Jane, one other question, for clients, again, we spoke in the beginning of the show, who are replaying a thought over and over, like you were with your ex-boyfriend. Can you refresh our memories as to what those strategies were to, kind of get out of that neural pathway and jump off that train?
Yeah. First of all, become that awareness. Naming it is a beautiful way to activate our awareness. Come into the body. And one thing I got from Tara Brach that I love is I put my hand on my heart and go, oh, I'm hurting. This thought is creating suffering. And then we acknowledge it. We don't make it bad. We're human. We're going to have these feelings. Oh, I'm hurting. And then when that when that's passed a little bit, when we've paid attention to it and it does its feeling things and passes on through, then we can say, well, what do I want to think? What would feel better to think right here? And then feel what that thought is. Like with my ex-boyfriend, what do I want to think? Well, I want to think that I am actually more than a man's love. And then even now I say that, I'm like, yeah, I do. And it activates our own power, our own agency. So it's not denying the thought. It's not making it bad. It's noticing, labeling, feeling, and then choosing, and what actually do I want to feel? And that's a 3-step thing that'll really help us move through these things faster.
Wonderful. Thank you for providing so many useful tips for us today. And we've got about 2 minutes left till the close of the show. So if you would both let us know where we can find you on social media, websites, all of that, that would be great.
Awesome.
Well, you can find me on Insta at McNulty Derek, McNultyDerek. I also have a website that will be coming along. We touched on it earlier, where I have this technology about keeping mosquitoes away from us. That is going to be launched this weekend, and that's going to be found on blissfulmusic.net. And so you'll be able to follow me there too, and all the things that are happening there.
Wonderful. And congratulations on that. We want those mosquitoes to stay far away from us. Dr. Jane, where can we find you?
You can, I'm bad with details, so I can't remember all the stuff, but my website is everydaylove.me. And there's a free course there for people who want to learn to trust their inner knowing more versus the external knowing. Then they can just hit everydaylove.me and then free course.
Wonderful. I'm going to check that out also. I'd like to thank you both for being on our show on transformation. Transformation is an endless journey and also a one day at a time, step-by-step journey. So I'm wishing all of our listeners all the best in your continued desire to grow, to learn, to change, to develop, and to transform and evolve. We'd like to thank our sponsors of the show, Yoga Fit Training Systems, the world's largest yoga mind-body school. We're having 2 upcoming live conferences, one in Minneapolis, Minnesota at the end of May, and in Scottsdale in early July. You can save 15% at checkout by using the code VOICE23 at yogafit.com. We have over 200 different courses, including new corporate wellness courses. So please check us out and get healthier. And if you would like to find me, you can find me on bethshaw.com or on Instagram at bethshawhealth. All of my books are available anywhere books are sold. And I would love to hear from you on future topics you'd like to see on Make America Healthy. So until next time, everyone, stay healthy, stay happy, keep moving your body, stay in touch with it, and wishing you the best and having a transformative day. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you.
All clear. Great job today, everyone.
Great. Thank you.
Have a great week. Take care.
Great. Dr. Jane, I'd love to read your book.
Awesome. I will send you, do you want a PDF or I can send you a hard soft copy?
I'm a soft copy person, and I'm happy to send you one of my books. My most recent one is called Healing Trauma with Yoga.
Oh, I would love that. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have my email? Just send me an address that I can send the book.
Okay.
And also, what else did I want to ask you? Have you had any clients who have done ketamine?
Yes. I had a client who had a lot of trauma in her childhood, and ketamine was what really helped her finally be able to access the other ways of thinking. It lifted her out of fear a great deal.
I start my first of 6 ketamine trials tomorrow, so I'm excited.
Awesome. One thing she said is that the integration part of it was not as strong. So she was glad she had me to help her. So I don't know if you've got a therapist. But
yeah, I've been my own mental health practitioner since the pandemic.
Awesome.
Yeah, but no, they have therapy, and actually they have free ongoing group therapy for as long as you need it. And then you get like 2 hours of integrative counseling with every session. It's a very good clinic. I actually had the gentleman on, if you didn't listen to the show on New Breakthroughs in Mental Health, it was about 3-4 shows ago. His name is John Giordano, and he runs the South Ketamine Clinic of Florida. And he's a big, I just had lunch with him today, as a matter of fact. They do all sorts of testing. They'll do microbiome testing, blood hormones, all of that. So it's a very comprehensive facility, not just like a one-off, come get a needle stuck in your arm type of place, which there are on every corner down here now.
Wow. No kidding.
Yeah.
It's like pot shops in Seattle.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And I hear you about the integration. It's something I don't refuse. I continually not give myself is time, space for integration after I do an intense transformative thing. And it's kind of a very kind thing to do for ourselves, but perfectionists are like, on to the next thing.
Exactly. Right? That's exactly what I did. And then like every morning I'm waking up that I had a dream about another ex-partner. And obviously the ayahuasca dredged up something from my subconscious. And I'm only hoping that the ketamine kind of like pushes it out the door.
Right.
Yeah.
I hear you. It's one of the this hidden, you might love this Hidden Blessings book. Hold on. It's midlife crisis is a spiritual awakening. And she talks about moving from the upper world, which is our creative personality, which is what we are shedding as we're doing this transformation, and going to the underworld, which is often the unconscious beliefs, the traumas, the stress, but also the underworld is the gem of our innate, amazing essence that is covered up by all the hurts and beliefs we were formed. So the underworld, moving through it as you do with ayahuasca or whatever, journey we do, is what does come to our essential innocence, which is why I love ecstasy, because I'm like, this is awesome. If I could live in the world like this, it'd be great. But we could also do it consciously.
Well, I have to say, my biggest transformation, to be honest, was when I did some bufo, which is a very intense version of ayahuasca. And in that journey, the ego death was brutal. So much so I blocked a lot of it out, and I didn't realize till it kind of came to me later. So the integration was something that was a long thing that I didn't expect at all. And every time I let go of it, another new chapter came in that gave me the clarity. But where it really fixed it for me personally was then doing a ketamine journey, where I was constantly in my head, oh, I got to do this, I got to do this. If this, then that, then the other was a constant thing I do in my life all the time. And so I found myself stuck, if you will, in this ketamine space where I kept thinking, I know my way out, I know the answer, I know the solution, asking a question, I got this. And it's futile, because any question you have is invariably going to come with an answer that produces more questions. And so you're stuck. And so I had to then come back to the initial ayahuasca stuff was, know in your heart that you know the answer, because you shouldn't have to ask it in the first place, because it's only love that made you ask the question. So if you stop with the idea that you have to prove your love to yourself, prove that love exists, and prove that the heart of all life is the search for love and the passionate and contentment, the needlessness that is so vital in life. And once I realized that was it, the question stopped, and immediately had a breakthrough in the most profound way. Bufo, ayahuasca, and ketamine came together in that one moment that you have to just trust your heart that it knows what it's doing, and stop questioning and protecting it with that big brain of ours where we think we have all the answers by proving ourselves. We have to, the reason they call it falling in love is because you fall. You fall ever so beautifully into a space that you don't question. And even though we've been hurt before, we can't keep bringing it up, or we're going to be hurt over and over again. We have to allow.
We don't have to, but it's a really good idea.
Yes. Very true.
Great. Well, I'd love to, Derek, obviously I'll stay connected to you. You're in South Florida. Dr. Jane, really great having you. You were a great guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I loved it. Take good care.
Thank you, guys.
Namaste, everyone. Thank you.
Great.
Namaste.
Take care. Bye.